The other day I was scrolling on Facebook and I happened to come across a couple of posts from a relative of mine basically describing gun control legislature as an attempt from the government to turn to tyrannical rule. Now, I've learned this phrase throughout my lifetime as something that my grandfather used to tell me when I was little, which is, you can't argue with stupid. Now, that's not to say that the opinions in this post are stupid, but what it does mean is there's no point in me going on a post with such a unipolar opinion that's obviously not open to discussion and trying to post something pro-gun legislature. It's not gonna get us anywhere. So as I keep scrolling, I keep seeing more and more of these posts, whether it's, pro-life, pro-choice, or anti-pro-trans, or legalization of scheduled substances, or building an oil pipeline through indigenous territory. The list goes on and on. Luckily this year, because of quarantine, I'm not required to be stuck in a room with these ticking time bombs this Easter, but eventually these conflicts have to come to a head, whether it's in my house or the House of Representatives. So today I'd like to discuss some different mediation techniques as tools for conflict resolution and their different implications in social conflict as well as interpersonal conflict. And then I'd like to discuss these different techniques in detail with you about how to have effective mediation and how you can model these techniques for your kids so that they can have better conflict resolution skills in the future as well. To begin, mediation is really an important instrument in almost any form of conflict. In fact, formal mediation has begun to play a role in virtually every single significant area of social conflict. The United States federal and state governments have become huge active sponsors of federal mediation programs, anything from personal employment disputes to public conflicts in healthcare and economics and environment issues. The federal sponsorship of mediation and related programs has been characterized as one of the most significant movements in the U.S. in the latter half of the 20th century, with profound effects in the way that the federal government handles conflict, according to some scientists. Some of the most profound examples of professional mediation have to do with divorce mediation or peer mediation in schools. There's community mediation, victim offender mediation, and even mediation within organizations. Conflict resolution, peer mediation, training, and skills directly affect the development of constructive conflict resolution skills in the future too, such as empathetic skills or self-expression skills and understanding skills. In fact, mediator students stated that the mediation process improved their self-esteem and self-confidence and helped develop their conflict resolution skills, which enabled them to understand other students and the reasons underlying their fights. It reduced interpersonal conflicts in fights and improved their relationships with their peers. But what does a professional mediator do exactly? So Sandra Hayes was an adult learning and development specialist and mediator when a school contacted her hoping to facilitate improvements in the teacher pedagogy and student achievement. So the school recognized that there might be some differences among faculty, including, different teacher administrator perspectives about how to improve this pedagogy, and they wanted to create some good discussion. Despite their shared value of teamwork and the belief that their collaboration would make a difference, they were still struggling to reconcile their differences of opinion. So Sandra's mediation comes in, and it teaches the participants to deepen their level of dialogue by shifting it from positions of needs to determining what those needs, whether those needs are being satisfied or frustrated. They also express commitment to fully engage with one another moving forward and to not be so conflict avoidant as they had been in the past. Though mediation tends to provide the most beneficial method of conflict resolution, those who are conflict avoidant or aggressive can pose added challenges. And that's why Dr. Christopher W. Moore designed a 12-stage model to simplify this process. So Moore's 12-stage model is a general outline describing successful mediation as structured to proceed in stages with various behaviors at each stage. Moore describes this mediation as a fluid, kind of multifaceted activity where behavior is a function of the context in which the mediation is embedded. So basically, the precise number and characteristics of these stages kind of vary considerably, but empirical evidence does still show support for Moore's model. Some disputants often derive benefits from the mediation independent of their ability to reach an agreement whatsoever. So Moore's 12 stages are as follows, and it's a little bit confusing, so stay with me. Establish a relationship. Select a strategy to guide mediation. Collect and analyze background information. design a detailed plan for mediation, build trust and cooperation, and begin the mediation session. Define the issues and set an agenda, uncover hidden interest of disputing parties, generate settlement options, assess the options for settlement, begin the final bargaining, and then achieve the formal settlement. Now, these 12 stages are a little bit too complex to diverge and thoroughly discuss in this presentation, but each stage is basically predominated by certain mediator behaviors that facilitate a productive conflict resolution. An important factor in evaluating a mediation technique is to be able to give positive answers to some basic questions. Does the mediator communicate a reasonable definition of his or her role? Do they appear even-handed? Do they make you feel safe, understood, feel free to make your own decisions? So Dr. Kressel describes what this looks like in the case of a divorcing couple referred to him and his colleagues. He said, "I tried to be clear that our primary role was to orchestrate a good problem-solving process, more or less independent of the goal of settlement." So now that we know what it takes to mediate effectively, now what? Like my grandfather said, there's no point in arguing with stupid, so it's important to demonstrate effective conflict resolution to those you come in conflict with so that they can learn these techniques as well and be able to demonstrate them in the future. So modeling, it's this key theory of cognitive behavioral psychological learning. It can be achieved effectively in the home through normal, everyday conflict. So modeling is this cognitive behavioral technique, right? It uses observational learning to basically teach young children and adults alike. Honestly, we all use it in every age of our entire lives. So observational learning is when a child observes a new behavior and then later tries to duplicate it, such as that, you know, not so nice new vocabulary word your child just brought home from school the other day. So almost everyone, regardless of family size, shape, experience, conflict, you know, they'll experience it at some point in their life. So these sources of conflict all differ as much as the people that are actually in the conflict, which provides the ability to learn adaptive skills that you can apply in multiple different scenarios throughout your lifetime. Now, Judge and Brickman present a stage model of effective mediation techniques for parents and non-professionals to model for your quarreling kids, and it goes something like this. First, you have to get the child's attention and ask them if they want help solving their problem. And then from there, if they do, you move to a quiet area to talk, explain, and get them to agree to 4 rules. 1, they have to agree to solve the problem. They can't use name calling, they can't interrupt, they have to be as honest as possible. And then ask one child what happened and how they feel about the scenario. And then once they're done, you repeat what they said, not only so that they can confirm, but also that child 2 can have an easier understanding. And then you repeat the process with child 2. Have child 2 explain how they saw what happened and how that made them feel. After that, you know, you repeat what child 2 said so child 1 can understand as well. And then you ask child 1 what they can do here and now, and then repeat the same thing with child 2. You help the children agree on a solution they each find fair, and once you do this, you put it in writing so that, you know, you have evidence of this. You restate it verbally, and then you have the children sign this. And then finally, you wrap up by congratulating them on successfully resolving their conflict. Now, the ability to effectively manage conflict may well be considered one of the basic characteristics of a truly educated person, according to Dr. Kressel. Training in mediation is an important subset of his ability, and there's evidence that such training may profitably begin as early as elementary school. However, much of today's training is geared to prepping contractual mediators to handle formalized conflict of the kinds that typically end up in court. And general mediation skills for non-specialists don't really get much focus. So for young children, learning the skills of mediation requires role play and stimulation, you know, something that'll actually get them involved in it. So by familiarizing themselves with this mediation process and encouraging its use throughout their lifetime, children can grow up to be effective managers, parents, and leaders. And together, we can transform mediation from a frequently untapped resource to a familiar and common instrument for resolving the disputes of everyday life.